Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCache. Thank you so much again for joining me here. Hope you're having a great day. Bitcoin losing its ascending trend line, pulling back to that $111,000 range. That is a key level support for Bitcoin. We're going to talk about that. And of course, some important stuff here regarding our Fed rate decision, Jerome Powell conference today. We have big tech earnings, and of course, we have a summit here as well for tariffs later this evening in the U.S. time zone. Of course, that's basically early morning in South Korea. So just be mindful; those three things are going to really shift the market here today. So we're going to talk a little bit too about CME futures, the gaps getting filled, and obviously some Bitcoin dominance and liquidation data. So be sure to stick around. We've got a good one today. Let's take a look. All right, folks, before we jump into the back-end data here, just want to ask you quickly, hit the like button, comment below. Deeply appreciate you doing so. I know some of you have been pretty creative with the comments lately, so thank you again for that. Once more, you are an amazing part of my life. I really appreciate you trying your best to help grow the channel. Now, what we want to look at here, of course, with Bitcoin is some back-end data. First, we're just going to start with reiterating the time frames for these fundamental events, essentially, these significant fundamentals that are going to impact the market. Now, when it comes to the Fed rate decision, that's always at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we get like an instant jolt in the market. It either goes up or down quickly because of that. And then it kind of calms down for a short while. And then once Jerome Powell gets up and speaks 30 minutes later at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time, that's when things get kind of crazy. All right, so be sure to be careful during those time frames. And I would just generally say, as a recommended rule of thumb today, don't trade, right? That's the easiest way to go. Obviously, if there's like an established trend, things look super awesome, maybe consider joining. But between now and then, probably best to kind of hesitate and wait, right? The best traders are going to be hanging out on the sidelines, not risking their portfolio. If you take trades, low leverage, low position size. We got big tech earnings too. That's actually at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when traditional markets do close, essentially. And we have those earnings report come out. Those are going to impact traditional markets and in turn impact crypto, specifically Bitcoin and then the residual. So just be mindful that's available there. And as far as the President Trump summit, that's regarding tariffs, I asked AI specifically what time it is. It's at 9 a.m. South Korea time, which is basically tomorrow for us in the U.S., but it's also tonight too, or more importantly, it is tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, effectively on the 29th of October. So whatever time zone you're on, figure that out. That's going to be a super volatile event too, because if things are positive, then we're going to see the crypto market move up. And generally speaking, when it's bad, it goes down. That's just the easy way to understand it. It's nothing super crazy. I doubt we're going to get good news and the price of crypto goes down. But once more, you never truly know. However, leading into that, we got 111,000 as our key level entry consideration for a macro structure. We're going to talk about that. But let's quickly look at the backend data and see if there's anything super outrageous. 113,300 is a significant sell order above, but really just we can see that 111.5 area is heavily guarded. So we have a larger delta of shorts versus longs in the local range. So that tells us that 112K roughly is that next area of support, or sorry, next area of resistance rather. When we look at liquidation, there's still more liquidation on the downside in the last 24 hours, but we can also recognize the same thing too for the last 7 days. And for the last 30 days, there's still more liquidation. So it's probably pretty safe to presume with all the liquidation below, we're going to continue lower, or at least we're going to see an aggressive, ridiculous candle wick to the downside with the price bouncing from there, depending on, again, the news here today, right? When we look at the overall liquidation, more longs and shorts are getting liquidated. So this is just kind of par for the course. It doesn't seem to be anything outrageous here. There's mostly just a 3-to-1 ratio for all the coins here that we're primarily look at. So generally speaking, that's nothing super outrageous. Let's go ahead and just get a quick refresh here and take a look at the market overview, and just kind of touching here, fear and greed index is tapering on and off between fearish and neutral. So generally a good place to buy in the overall sense, depending on how you look at it. I'm referring more so to a spot bag perspective, not a high leverage long. But when we look at altcoin season index, our crypto market cap is still maintaining over 1.5 trillion. Generally, that's favorable. Okay, that does include stablecoins, so keep that in mind. So that's kind of just something to be mindful of. Speaking of stablecoin, make sure you check out Bitunix, awesome exchange, link down below for that. We got a nice $700 deposit reward bonus and $8,000 USDT and 2 Ethereum up for grabs there, essentially as an airdrop. So it's good stuff. Be sure to check it out. It's all linked down below. We're a Bitunix family in our community here, so just make sure that if you use my link to register, you'll always be eligible for future trading competitions or bonuses. All right, so take a look here at Bitcoin. Let's go to the backend data first and just quickly recognize where we're at here with open interest. Once more, 111,000, we're right there at that area. Okay, so not only has it worked as a magnet to fill its CME gap, majority of the gap, we'll look at that here next, but we are in a position right now where that's the likely bottom, right? It's very tentative, of course, because we don't really know what's going to happen in the next 24 hours. It's going to be pretty crazy here today. So just be mindful of that. But for the most part, liquidation short delta is high to the downside. Furthermore, too, if we look at overall interest here, this is the last 1 month's worth of trading. We don't have a lot of interest, or sorry, we don't have a lot of liquidation here locally. In other words, majority of macro liquidation has been swept. So we generally have to zoom in times like this. We've already kind of looked at the 7-day time frame on the other charts, but let's quickly look at the last 3 days here. Just give us some perspective, and all those late longs here, still a little bit left at 110.5, 110.6 are mostly swept. Okay, so generally speaking, people that thought that they were safe with a liquidation event at 111,000, sorry, that's not the case. All right, let's take a look here at CME futures. Giving you some perspective here, and just to clarify too, people are probably thinking, what do you mean 111,600, we haven't fully filled our CME gap? Well, the truth is CME futures run different than traditional crypto exchanges, right? They seem to be higher in most cases, or just depending on the direction, of course, but for the most part here at this point, we can see CME futures is pulling back to mostly fill its CME gap there. Ethereum, you could argue, is fully swept, and so is Solana. Okay, so Solana and Ethereum are pretty much done. Bitcoin might have a little bit more downside. We see 110.6 for Bitcoin, then we're probably going to see roughly that 111,000 mark covered here for Ethereum. Okay, so just something to be aware of there. Now, taking a look at the traditional charts, the regular charts here, kind of looking at the overall scenario here. We are in a position right now where, once more, that 0.5 fib level, that previous high working as a potential new low, is essentially the case. That's right where we're at right now. Does this mean we're going to see the price action just shoot up from here? No, a naive person would think that. But truth is, in this market, we're probably going to see today be one of these here. And some kind of weird direction, okay? We're not quite sure where we're at there yet, so the best thing to do is just kind of wait on the sidelines. But if you do insist on trading, that's why we're looking at this here today, we're going to identify some key levels. 110.5, 111,000 area of confluence based on support. We look at the larger timeframes here, or sorry, we zoom out a little bit here and look at some indicators. The 4-hour time frame is still diverging. And speaking of diverging, congrats again to our community members for some nice profits here on our Bitcoin short, 44% there. And obviously we got our XRP profit yesterday at about 28%. We had to wait a little bit longer for that trade, had to be patient. And XRP, truth is, still looking very strong. We'll talk about that here later. But overall, at this point, Bitcoin pulling back to its local bottom. We're going to see if this level holds or not. Generally speaking, we can maintain above this range for 24 hours. That's a case in point where you may want to consider a long in this range. Right now, taking a long into all these fundamental catalysts is just inherently a bad idea. That's just kind of the concept there. So please be mindful of that. If you consider a trade today, it's always going to be high risk. That's just the bottom line. So Bitcoin is Bitcoin right now. It's just kind of where we're at. There's no significant improvements on the daily time frame. I'll save you the trouble there. We're really in the same position as yesterday. The daily time frame is still looking decent, but we're not fully bullish yet. Okay. All right, that's where we're at there for Bitcoin. Let's take a look at some altcoins. All right, folks, let's get started off with Ethereum first. And just to quickly note, Ethereum is in a position right now where we are seeing the scenario in which the price actions didn't bounce off 4,000. We're continuing lower. Now, it's not to say we're going to keep going lower, but we're hitting this overextended state in this consolidation range. I mentioned 3950 is a solid consideration for an average entry, just based on local highs and that center line there for that rough estimate of a 0.5 fib level for this current retracement period. So all that stuff kind of combined leads me to believe that we're in a tentative bottom, just like Bitcoin's at 111,000. But we really don't want to be naive and think that we're just going to instantly bounce from here. We have some weird, bad news today. Then the market is going to totally shift gears on us, okay? So once more, we're in a decent shape right now. We're just not in great shape. It's a very unique place to trade. And basically what that means is you don't want to trade, okay? So translation is when the market's crap or trash, you don't trade, all right? Now, when we take a look here at open interest, once more, 3950, 4,000, that's kind of the range there. So we're right in that support range for Ethereum. A very similar synonymous type of price action to Bitcoin, okay, as far as open interest ranges and just kind of that extra area of support in the current area. Now, when we look at liquidation delta, we're at 6 billion on the red, so that's not really a good sign here. When we look at the overall sentiment too as well, we are seeing that liquidation the last 7 days is mostly swept. We could obviously zoom in a little bit and argue that there is some at 3,900 and 3,800. Those are the two heaviest concentrations. So just know every round number, 39, 38, 3,700, we're going to see those extra areas of liquidation. So those are decent areas of consideration for long targets. In other words, entry on a long position, or possibly even a short consideration to those levels. Now, once more, we talked about how poorly Ethereum is paired with Bitcoin, and we can kind of see here that it's not looking so good, right? Now, you could argue that this is a better pairing. Right? In the last 24 hours, we're seeing a slight improvement. It's not quite as low of a low as Bitcoin, but it's still bad. All right. So no matter how you look at it, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Ethereum's not looking great. Okay. So that is kind of where we're at there. The 4-hour time frame does have divergences as we expected and talked about yesterday. Daily time frame is still roughly the same as before. There's not much convergence here per se, except just acknowledging the point of controls at 4,300. That's at local resistance. And we do have a decent amount of support in the $4,600 to $4,800 range based on previous volume. Okay. So overall, if we go any lower, I wouldn't be super scared or concerned. It's pretty common for this coin here right now to be behaving this way in this range. All right. So those are my thoughts on Ethereum. What are yours? Let me know. If you're looking for a new exchange or possibly just want to help support the channel, Bitunix has got you covered. We've been partnered with this exchange for over 2 years. It's been our fan favorite for our community, and the reason why is because they take really good care of you. They offer trading reward bonuses as well as a reduction in fees. Best exchange I would recommend at this point. Link down below for more information. Moving on to Solana. Solana is pretty strong here today, all things considered. This is one of the few coins that's not pulling back super hard. We are seeing some overextension on the daily time frame. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Let's look at Solana backend and just see. And once more, reaffirming 190 to 195 is that support range. We talked about it yesterday. It held like a champ here earlier when we bounced off this level late last night, looks like. Of course, I was sleeping for that. But generally speaking, we can see that liquidation delta is approaching break even. So unlike Ethereum, it's plateauing. Solana is essentially reversing that. In other words, it's telling us that there's more people trying to buy this 190 to 195 range. When we look at the amount of liquidation, that full area between 185 and 190 wasn't hit. Majority of everything else was, of course. So this is neither good nor bad. It just kind of implies that we got to be mindful if the price were to start pulling back to that 190 range, that 185 is going to be next on the docket. Okay. So taking a look here at let's quickly do the comparison and just understand that we're looking pretty good here for Solana. Like Solana, while yes, it's pulled back in the last 4 hours, or sorry, that's roughly the last 4 hours. This is the hourly time frame. We can see that it bounced back and recovered a lot quicker than Bitcoin. Okay, so if you kind of see this guy here, that was small and that was large. Okay, so Solana is recovering nicely on these dips, but it is pulling back quite hard too when it does. So it's kind of a 2x to the downside, 2x to the upside. So just be mindful of that when you're trading this coin. Now, when we look at the daily, once more, point of control 204, 203, right in that range above the price. So that's the current resistance for us. We zoom out a bit further, we can kind of see that we're above the 20-day SMA and the 200. So 180 to 190 has a lot of confirming factors there for us. Multiple moving averages. And then if we look at the daily time frame too here, while we haven't broken above 50 on the RSI, the money flow index is tapering higher. In other words, it's basically showing us that we're in a position where there's more money flowing into this coin than other coins, just generally, and that's a positive sign. Bitcoin doesn't have the same kind of scenario on the daily time frame. So that does speak highly to Solana being able to recover. But we also got to recognize 200 to 205 is that solid area of resistance. And we look at the 4-hour time frame, just like most other coins, we are seeing some divergences here. It's not as strong, albeit a little bit weaker than others. In other words, the pullbacks are not as strong. But the key takeaway here is that we're still kind of tapering in between these support and resistance range. And the overall sentiment is that this local area about 195 is holding so far so good. So if Bitcoin doesn't pull back, I would be willing to speculate that Solana is gonna push towards 200 again. If we can break above 205 in the next push, and next close above that level for 48 hours, 24 hours, right in that range, we'll be in really good shape to see more continuation higher, because we would have broken our descending trend line there too. Right? We got to remember we still got a macro descending trend here, and we're not in great shape yet to say that Solana is fully bullish. Right? We're still in that transition phase, which can be quite annoying in a lot of ways. All right, so that's Solana for us. Let's take a look at SUI next. I left this cup and handle pattern on the charts here just so you can kind of understand how important it is not to trade patterns alone. Okay. Now, as I talked about previously yesterday, we had a lot of good confirming factors in this coin, and heaven forbid you took a long position here in the red right now. That happens sometimes. But the whole point of me mentioning this is that, Cup and handle pattern, yes, we had a lot of good potential to break out, but Bitcoin had another agenda, right? SUI, as we've discussed previously, is a very strong coin to the downside when it pulls back. It's the same thing to the upside as well, but for the most part, it tends to be like 2 to 3x the Bitcoin to the downside, and then like 3 to 5x to the upside, right? So statistically, this coin has more propensity to break out and run, but it's also a coin that can flop pretty hard. So I want you to be mindful of that if you're trading this coin, because once more, if you saw some wonderful Elliott wave theory on this coin and it was supposed to leg up again and it didn't, you can't be mad at the theory. Well, you probably should be because it's dumb, but you shouldn't be. You should be more so mad at yourself for taking too high of a risky trade, right? Mainly because once more, the premise is Bitcoin's pulling back, right? And we have fundamental catalysts, all sorts of weird stuff going on. So you really shouldn't be trading this coin at this point. And if you do, low leverage and/or position size just to be safe, to ensure you're not in a, don't put yourself in harm's way, right? You got to protect your portfolio, folks. It's just the way it goes. Now, when we look at 250. We can see that support level for us here based on open interest. And generally speaking, I have been talking about previously the 240 to 250 range being a good area to consider dollar cost averaging, mainly because we have that macro point of control at 245. Or sorry, that's just the macro support level at 245. I think our macro point of control is above the price, but we have confluence at 245 and the local range at 250 is holding pretty strong. When we look at liquidation delta, still in the red, not really optimal. And we can see a lot of liquidation to the downside here left. So that leads me to believe that 240 is probably going to get hit here soon, just based on this momentous trend and how poorly SUI has been responding to Bitcoin itself. Let's take a quick look at SUI and see. Well, this isn't like terrible. It's still not great, right? It's kind of, I guess you could say it's similar in ways to Solana's chart, just a little bit more aggressive. Okay, so once more, high volatility in this coin. I wouldn't expect miracles, but we are overextended leading into this local support range of 250. And I say support range because if you look at the amount of volume, we see 250 as a low point and 263 as a high point. So there's a solid chance we're going to be ranging in this little range for a little while, and we'll probably be able to pivot and bounce here, pending Bitcoin doesn't dump on us. But at this point, it's hard to really warrant taking a long position at this tentative bottom when Bitcoin certainly looks like it wants to continue to run. And SUI hasn't been proven to be the strongest coin to respond well to Bitcoin sell-offs. So all that being said, do what you will there. I hope that information is helpful. But generally speaking, 240 is that solid area of confluence based on liquidation and the macro support range, that lower range. So 240, 245 seems like a practical consideration for a long on this coin. It could very well be a triple bottom. Okay, so something along those lines to think about. Once more, you're better off waiting for an opportunity that doesn't happen than taking one that is a higher risk consideration. It's very high risk to consider a long right now, especially leading into these events here today. Even though I'm sure this coin will probably pump with Bitcoin if it does. Okay, so there's that too. All right, moving on to XRP. This is the one coin that actually looks quite favorable. It's not pulling quite back as far as I had hoped for. Good news is, once more, I've already touched on this, but we did hit our 28% profit target for XRP. That was a short, what was it, from 264 to 259? It was fairly tight, just a little 10x short. Took a little bit of time to get to our profit. Once more, like 24 hours longer than I had wanted to. But what I'm getting at, and the whole point of that, is that this coin's maintaining this range super well, okay? So this range that we're in right now, it's a pretty solid amount of support in this area, okay? So there's a decent chance we continue higher from here based on the simple fact that this is a bullish type of rectangle pattern. And once more, it's not because it's a pattern, okay? It's just an easy way to describe consolidation before the next leg up, because there's the bears are slowly losing control as the price continues to get pushed here. Okay, that's kind of the concept. So let's look at the back end and kind of just double check a few things. XRP, obviously we've got significant open interest at 250. That's that local high. That's the range I was hoping to see hit here recently to get a little bit more profit on our short. All right. Now at this point though, 265, we're in a significant area of open interest, and that's basically reinforcing support. We're also seeing too here, liquidation delta is tapering off. It's getting more bullish than bearish. We got pushed down pretty hard when we wicked down to 256, but generally speaking, that's more so a positive thing. We're seeing the same thing with Solana as well. It's looking like it's shifting gears. And we look here as well, we can see 255 and 270 are the upper and lower range here. This is why range-bound trading can get kind of crazy and volatile once you have a breakout. That's why breakout traders are unsuccessful, but when they are successful, they usually find good profit. Just because we have so much liquidation accumulated above and below that it's inevitable for the price to break out. Bollinger Bands are starting to compress, things get into range, breakouts are inevitable. So Daily time frame, I want to remind you that we're not in good shape here still. This is not a macro bullish breaking scenario. You shouldn't be running to the heavens. In fact, you should read my Discord and go through our what is it? We have a stupid thumbnails section. Some people are just so absolutely ridiculous with this coin. They seem to think $1,000 is practical or a possibility. If it is, it's not going to be in our lifetime, that's for sure. But the whole aspect of me showing this to you, and the reason why I like to remind you there, is because we're still in a descending trend. Any practical trader, realistic trader, a trader that actually knows what they're doing, is going to understand that we still haven't broken bullish yet. Even if we do, we're not going to go to $5, $10, $15, $30, right? The possibility of that is still there. Okay, it's very minimal, but it's possible. Just like just like finding $1 million, while digging in somebody's yard, right? That could happen too. But it's so astronomically ridiculous that it's not even possible, or it just shouldn't enter your mind, right? And anyways, I'm reiterating that and reaffirming that because we get a lot of people coming over from XRP enthusiast channels, and they like the realism here. While I'm going a little bit overboard here, of course, as per usual, I like to kind of drive the point home that this descending trend, until we get above this lower high pattern, we're not in a position to be like balls to the wall. Yes, let's go. All right. The reason why I'm hesitating to take it long is because we have significant resistance between 270 and 275. That's that previous low range. All right. So previous lows work as new highs, and we still have yet to test that level officially. I think we hit 269, somewhere in there. All that said, we do have some really positive contributing factors where we're 50 in the RSI. Money flow index is moving along with the price action above that level too. Stochastic is tapering off, and MACD is also doing the same. We're starting to lose momentum. So from a momentum standpoint and an overextension standpoint, we're at a 9 on TD sequential, by the way. We've basically been moving in the same direction for 9 days, 11 days roughly. That kind of leads me to believe that pullback would make sense, right? So we should presume a pullback should occur here. But once more, lower timeframes are confirming continuation potential. All right. So unlike other coins, we are seeing good convergence here, still above 50 in the RSI. A lot of reasons why we're in a decent shape, and the likelihood of further continuation higher is greater. But once more, I don't think we're going to go much past 270, 275 here soon. Even if we were to travel into that range, that would be an excellent short opportunity. I'd be very happy to consider a short at 275 at this point. But those, again, are my thoughts. What are yours? Why don't you comment below? Love to hear it. Thanks again for being just a phenomenal part of my life. We'll look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Hope you have a great rest of your day out there. You take care. Bye-bye.